Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, big week ahead on many fronts. The voting rights front, but also the January 6th, getting to the bottom of what happened, holding people accountable. And I go back to this. People need to be held accountable for their actions. And I look at Jim Jordan, whose letter on why he's not going to cooperate with the January 6th committee is just, I don't know how a sitting member of Congress can get away with this, but he says that he's got nothing to hide, but he has no relevant information for the committee. And I'm going, I think we, the people, should be the judge of that. I think he most certainly should be sitting in the hot seat and answering questions about his actions in and around January 6th. Just my thoughts. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on where the Democrats are going to be moving forward from this point on. Also, maybe some thoughts on January 6th. I've asked Andy Levin to come talk with us. Andy is a congressional representative from Michigan's 9th Congressional District. Andy, thanks for taking some time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be with you. Good to see you.
So I need you to weigh in on Jim Jordan, but I am curious, what are your memories of what happened a little over a year ago?
Well, I'll never forget that day, Rick. As you said, I represent the 9th District of Michigan, and Michigan was one of the states that was being challenged. So we had prepared the 7 Democratic members from Michigan. We met with Speaker Pelosi, with staff, with attorneys. We were ready to defend the legitimacy of Michigan's election, which was, really, there's no question about it. It was audited. It was challenged in court, upheld multiple times. But anyway, we had made prepared our speeches. And I was in my office getting ready for that. And there came a banging on the door, not a knock. And the only person I had with me because of security and COVID was my chief. He went and answered the door. This Capitol police officer bursts in. We're evacuating the Cannon building. So that was sort of the start of it. And we were evacuated through the tunnels over to another Longworth office building. I ended up spending some time with my good friend Deb Holland and then with my Michigan colleague, Alyssa Slotkin, because they had offices in the Longworth building. And then we went over and it was, Rick, this is the first time since 1814, since the War of 1812, our capital, our temple of democracy was ransacked by a violent mob who had mace, bear spray, all manner of, hand ties and clubs and poles. And they beat police officers. They killed people. It was horrifying. And
can you imagine what would have happened? Can you imagine what would have happened if they'd have gotten hold of you or another member of Congress? Has that gone through your head?
I think I have a defense mechanism, dude. But they would have killed us. If a lot of them would have. And they were obviously looking, they had nooses, they had, all kinds of, and they chanted, they were looking for us, kill the vice president. So, but here's the thing. The people who invaded, ransacked, trashed our capital, hurt people, must be held accountable. But I'll tell you else who needs to be held accountable. We walk back crunching over broken glass and walking over freshly swabbed up blood into that House chamber. And we were determined to finish our duty, which is just supposed to be a ceremonial celebration of democracy. There was no real decision being made. The people had voted, right? We're just supposed to ratify it. And 147 of my colleagues, despite what had just happened, despite that violence, despite that desecration, voted to nullify the votes of millions of their fellow Americans. They also are insurrectionists.
Yep. No, and that's
then.
No,
yeah,
you're
and
spot
then
on.
you get to the Jim Jordans of the world and others who evidently participated in planning this in some way, or knew about it, or were talking to the White House about it. what we're learning, this select committee has done such a fantastic job. We should have, of course, had a 9/11 commission type of thing, but the Republicans wouldn't do that. So Pelosi said, okay, we'll have a select committee. Then Kevin McCarthy tried to appoint people who were involved in the insurrection. So that was crazy. But we have two brave Republicans and the Democrats on this committee, and they have interviewed hundreds of people, looked at thousands and thousands of pages of documents. A lot of what they found hasn't come out yet because they're organizing it. Yeah. But clearly, a number of my colleagues, including Jim Jordan, seem to have been involved in some way in preparations for January 6th, talking to the White House back and forth, talking to these war rooms, different. So of course he should come forward and testify and be questioned about what he knew.
Yeah, see, I want all of them held accountable. I want the people who defecated on the floor and broke windows, absolutely. But I want the people who organized this. I want the people who funded it. And more importantly, I want the people who are going to benefit from it. And that goes all the way up to Donald Trump himself. I don't think we can move forward unless there is transparency and accountability in this. And I looked at someone like Jordan, especially, who was on that Benghazi committee that I heard for years, two and a half, almost 3 years, we can't move forward as a country until we get to the bottom of this. And yet they're the ones saying now, well, can't we just move forward? Can't we just move on? Can't we all just get along? No, we can't. Just my thought. Anyway, so I'm happy we're moving in the direction. I did want to get your thoughts on some of the other stuff that has to happen. We got to get some voting rights stuff done. I'm hoping the president, who's going to be in Atlanta tomorrow, is going to help move that along. I'm curious your thoughts on do you think the piece of legislation, the voting rights legislation, is going to move through?
Well, I mean, first of all, we can't accept failure. So I'm not at all close to being ready to give up. The situation in the country is super dire on this. The voters across the country are facing discrimination at the ballot box in so many forms, like unlawful purges, shortened voting hours, closing of polling places in low income and minority communities. And, last year, over 19 states passed 34 new laws that create barriers to voting. And in the last couple of years, 389 bills have been introduced in 48 states to restrict voting access, and including in my own state of Michigan, where we have special problems because the legislature could do a weird trick where a referendum is planned, but it doesn't have to actually go to the people. The state legislature can pass it and the governor can't veto it. And anyway, that's if you are interested, it's a crazy quirk of Michigan. But here's the thing, Rick, the House has acted to protect the rights of all American voters. We passed the For the People Act, H.R. 1. We passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. But these actions have been held up by the filibuster in the Senate. And it's blatant obstructionism. And so it's time to abolish the filibuster as far as I'm concerned. But specifically what's happened over in the Senate is Joe Manchin said, well, H.R. 1 or S1 is too much for me. And I'm a former Secretary of State, so I'm going to write my own law. And I'm going to get 10 Republicans to vote for it. Well, Rick, actually, what he wrote is good enough, brother. It's good enough. It would make Election Day a national holiday. It would have 15 days of early voting, including 2 weekends, automatic registration, motor voter, register up till Election Day, get rid of partisan gerrymandering, and deal with these voter suppression issues and purges of lists, and also deal with this thing going around the country that they want legislatures to be able to overturn the results of elections if they don't like them. I mean, these things are the end of democracy. Okay, exactly. So where are we? Did he get his 10 Republicans? No, he did. Not even close, right? So we're at a point where Joe Manchin and others have to agree on some little tweak to the filibuster to let this get voted on by majority vote. That has been done scores of times. There are many, many exceptions to the filibuster, which after all is only a Senate rule. It's nothing, 50 senators could vote to abolish the filibuster altogether. And they just went around the filibuster in a way like this to deal with the debt ceiling. So don't ask me about predictions. Ask me what I need from everybody who's here and are watching us. get on your phone, get in your email, write a letter,
Absolutely.
get on a bicycle, ride to the Capitol. Everybody raise your voice, march around in the street and say, we must save our democracy. The Senate must pass democracy defending legislation, because whatever they can get through the Senate, we will pass in the House.
No, and that's what's needed. I mean, I've said for a long time, the filibuster has been the reason that the Senate is the place where good ideas go to die, especially if it's something good for working folks. And one of the things I did want to ask you about is the PRO Act, which is something that I've been advocating for a very long time, Andy. It seems like anything that helps we, the working people, doesn't seem to have a chance. And I go back to, I was a Bill Clinton supporter simply because he said, hey, we're going to pass strike replacement. I voted for Barack Obama twice because, hey, we're going to get something better than the Employee Free Choice Act. Looked me in the eye, shook my hand twice. We're getting something better, he said. We got nothing. And this is one of those things that I don't think another administration can go by without some kind of help for working class folks to be able to join and form unions and bargain for better wages, hours, and conditions. I just don't think it can happen.
Rick, there's no, the cause of my life is the workers' freedom to form unions and bargain collectively. It's the only way to increase the voice and power of workers in our society. And, I started out as a union organizer in the early 80s and helped thousands of people form unions with SEIU. And then I was a staff attorney. Bill Clinton wasn't really for labor law reform. Instead of proposing anything, he created a blue ribbon commission. That sucked for the workers of this country, but it was good. It was good for me personally because I got to be the staff attorney to that commission and I learned a lot. But, then Newt Gingrich was elected and to be speaker, and our proposals just gathered dust and Clinton never did anything. Yeah, he tried striker replacement, but so late, he did it way too late and it never really took hold. And then you come to Obama. Here's the point. Since the National Labor Relations Act was passed in 1935, the Wagner Act, Congress has not passed a new law, a paragraph, a damn comma that makes it easier for workers to organize and bargain. And of course, they passed a lot that made it harder, like the Taft-Hartley amendments and parts of the Landrum-Griffin law. And then the courts have stepped in and the states with their right to freeload laws. It's been a disaster. So you are absolutely right. Here, let me just say three quick things about this. Number one, the most important thing happening is not discussions in Congress, but workers in motion in this country. Because when the Wagner Act was passed in 35, it wasn't because a bunch of genteel Congress people had a lovely conversation. It was because workers were organizing and striking and the bosses were freaking out.
Yep.
And they said, it was like, we think of it as like our foundational labor law. It was a compromise at that time. And so again, you've got Kellogg workers who were struck and got a contract. You got John Deere workers who rejected 2 proposals before they got a contract. You got mine workers in Alabama who've been on strike for months and months and months. You have people forming unions in, e-commerce and, digital media and all this crazy stuff. You got tens of thousands of graduate employees. I once went to jail, or several times went to jail with John Sweeney to demand the right of graduate employees to organize. I think we did it once at Temple and once at NYU. And now Columbia's, or NYU's workers have a union. And now the graduate employees of Columbia just got a contract. So, we've got to stand and fight for all workers, but it's when workers are in motion that we'll have a better chance to pass.
I'm right there with
PRO
you.
Act.
Absolutely. I say that the NLRA was a peace treaty more than anything.
Exactly. Now, one other quick thing I got to tell you, because there's not many people even talk about this, but in Build Back Better, we have some important provisions from the PRO Act. So if we could get the Build Back Better Act passed as we had it in the House, we put the penalties from the PRO Act in Build Back Better. So you can't change everybody's rights, but when an employer violates workers' rights, it fits under a budget reconciliation to say, hey, let's get a little more money for the Treasury by socking that employer with an actual meaningful fine for firing that worker or whatever. That puts money in the Treasury. We also increase the fines for violations of OSHA, like tenfold increases, Rick, serious, and violations of the wage and hour. Plus, we put $5 million in there to enact my provision to have electronic voting for workers who want to organize during a pandemic or if it just seems too intimidating to have the election in the employer premises, let people vote electronically. You know that that's what they've done under the Railway Labor Act for many years without one scintilla of evidence of fraud or a problem. It saves the taxpayers money because you don't have to send a board agent out to Poughkeepsie or, Phoenix to run the election. So anyway, there's some good stuff, but I am 100% with you. Until we pass fundamental labor law like the PRO Act, we will not rebuild the middle class of this society, full stop. And it's my number one priority in Congress.
No, and thank goodness you're there. Thank goodness you're doing the work you're doing. But to your point about the electronic voting, then Amazon can't have the post office bring a mailbox that they can point a bunch of cameras at to watch who's voting. That's the reason that can't happen. And the fines you talk about, currently the most dreaded part of the fine system is posting a notice and maybe back pay minus anything someone at work. So there's no real penalty. We need those financial penalties, but we also need everything else that's in the PRO Act, in my opinion. Totally. We need to undo the last 40, 50 years of assaults on organized labor and give people the power to join and form and also to collectively bargain. Because, look, we're in a moment, Andy, and you see it. There are 4.5 million people who have left their job. The great resignation. People are leaving. There is chaos. It's just not being reported on enough, and it's not in the streets yet. But at some point, it's going to have to be.
Absolutely. Can I tell you a little story? So I get to Congress right after I first won in 2018. And I get on the Education Labor Committee. The union organizer goes to Congress, right? And I say, well, when is labor law reform going to come up? And somebody said, well, in like 3 weeks. I was like, dang, could I see it before it comes up? Me like a union organizer / labor lawyer. And they go, oh, yeah. So they send it to me. Rick, I marked the heck up out of it. I wrote all my little comments. And I said, well, could I meet with the committee staff? And so here comes these committees. They like, well, no member ever asked to meet with us, So here they come down to my office and we really, put some improvements in there. But I'm telling you, the PRO Act does more, so many things.
We need it.
Workers would, if they fire you because you're trying to form a union, boom, injunction to put you back in there. First contract arbitration, so many things. So we are going to get it done, brother. You and me. And the rest of the working people. Thanks.
Andy, I appreciate the time, man. Great stuff. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Michigan Representative Andy Levin. Make sure you check out the work that he's doing. We'll get links out on social media. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.